The wind moved slow that evening, carrying the scent of dust and sage through the dying light. The sun bled low across the far ridge as a lone rider came down the trail into Sagebrush Hollow, his shadow stretching long and tired behind him. His name was Eli Mercer, though folks rarely spoke it above a whisper. He was the kind of man who carried silence the way other men carried a gun, always ready, always close. No one knew what loss had shaped him, but everyone knew he'd buried something out by the canyon years ago, something he never spoke of. He tied his horse outside the saloon, the kind of place where music used to play, but now only flies hummed. And that's when he saw her, standing on the porch of the boarding house across the street, a bucket of water in one hand, her shawl slipping off her shoulder. May Caldwell. New to town, just a widow trying to start over. Her eyes met his for the briefest breath, and in that heartbeat something inside him paused. The world quieted. Even the dust seemed to hover midair. Her eyes were gray, soft like morning fog over the river, and for reasons he couldn't explain, Eli felt like he'd been waiting to see them all his life. But Sagebrush Hollow had a cruel way of welcoming strangers. Martha Lee, who ran the boarding house, whispered to her neighbor, "That widow's already looking for trouble." And before the sun had set, the town had already written May's story for her. She tried not to hear the whispers. She just kept working, washing, cooking, tending the garden behind the church. Eli passed her sometimes in town, their eyes catching like two notes in the same melody. One morning, at the general store, she fumbled with her coins, her hands trembling. The shopkeeper sighed, impatient, muttering about penniless widows. Eli stepped forward, silent as dusk, laid a silver dollar on the counter, and said, "Just pay it forward someday." May looked up, startled, her lips parting as if to speak, but he tipped his hat and walked out before she could. It was a small gesture, simple as breath, but something in her chest felt lighter after that. That night, she sat by her window, the moon pale over the hills, and whispered to herself, "Maybe not everyone in this town's forgotten how to be kind." But kindness has a cost in places like Sagebrush Hollow. By the next morning, gossip spread like prairie fire. Folks said she'd caught Eli Mercer's attention, that she was after his land. Even his old friend Silas Reed joined in, laughing in the saloon, saying, "Mercer's lost his mind over a widow with nothing but a sad story." Eli heard him, but said nothing. He just finished his drink and left. Weeks passed. Eli found excuses to ride by the churchyard. May was always there, tending flowers that struggled against the dry soil. One day the fence broke, and he got down from his horse, fixing it beside her without a word. When they finished, he handed her a small sprig of blooming sage. "For the garden," he said. Her eyes glistened. "No one's ever given me flowers before." He smiled faintly. "Then it's long overdue." Behind them, Sheriff Dugan watched from the street, shaking his head. "Every time love comes quiet, this town turns cruel," he muttered to himself. By the week's end, May found a note slipped under her door. "You deserve peace, no matter what they say." No signature, but she knew whose hand had written it. She kept it folded in her apron, close to her heart. Then one night, the quiet shattered. Silas Reed stumbled out of a saloon, drunk and mean. He found Eli saddling his horse and spat at his boots. "You think you're some saint, taking pity on her? She'll ruin you, Mercer. She's got nothing but trouble in her eyes." Eli's jaw tightened. "Don't talk about her." Silas sneered. "Everyone talks about her." Before Silas could say more, Eli's fist connected hard, sending him sprawling into the dirt. The whole street went silent. People watched from their porches, whispering behind half-closed doors. And from her window, May saw it all. The next morning she found Eli repairing his fence, his knuckles raw. "Why'd you do it?" she asked softly. He didn't look up. "Because some things are worth fighting for." Her voice trembled. "No one's ever fought for me before." For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them was heavy, like the pause before a summer storm. She reached out, brushing his wounded hand, and he didn't pull away. It was enough. They didn't need words to name what had begun to grow between them. But Sagebrush Hollow wasn't done with them yet. The sheriff rode out that evening, dust rising behind his horse. Town stirred up Eli. Folks are saying things. You'd best ride out a while, let it settle. Eli stared toward the hills, jaw hard. If me leaving keeps her safe, then that's what I'll do. When May learned he was gone, she ran to the edge of town, her skirt whipping in the wind. The trail was empty, but for the fading hoof prints in the dirt. She fell to her knees, whispering, "Don't you dare disappear on me too." Days turned to nights. The town seemed quieter without him, lonelier somehow. Then, one evening, a storm rolled in fast and mean. Lightning split the sky, striking near the old church. Flames caught on the dry wood. May grabbed buckets, trying to fight it alone as rain poured down. Far out on the plains, Eli saw the fire against the clouds. He didn't think. He just rode. The rain cut like knives, wind howling through the sage. By the time he reached the town, smoke clawed at the sky and people stood back, too afraid to help. But not him. He charged straight into the storm. "May!" he shouted, kicking the door in just as part of the roof gave way. She turned, coughing, eyes wide. He grabbed her, pulling her out into the rain, both collapsing into the mud outside as the church bell crashed behind them. For a long moment, neither moved. Then May's shaking hands reached for his face. "I thought you gone." "I tried," he said, voice raw, "but a man can't outrun what his soul's already tied to." The townsfolk stood watching as he wrapped his coat around her shoulders. No one whispered now. No one dared. The fire hissed in the rain, smoke curling into the dawn. As the first light of morning broke, May leaned against him, her face pressed to his chest. "You came back," she whispered. "I reckon I never really left," he said. The sheriff nodded quietly from a crowd. Even Martha Lee looked away, wiping at her eyes. The town that once judged them now stood still, as if humbled by the sight of something true. The storm passed. The ashes of the church steamed under the morning sun. The world felt new again. Eli took May's hand, their fingers intertwining, as though they'd been meant to find each other all along. He looked down at her, eyes soft. "You and me," he said, "will build something out of all that's been burned." And as they stood there, the wind carried the smell of wet sage through the air. Somewhere far off, a meadowlark began to sing, the sound sweet and lonely. They say a man's soul can wander a lifetime looking for peace. But sometimes peace don't come in riches or land. It comes wearing dusty boots and eyes that remember kindness. Eli Mercer found his that morning, standing in the rain beside the woman who taught him how to feel again. If you've ever lost someone, if you've ever carried the weight of silence, remember this. Love don't always come loud or perfect. Sometimes it comes gentle, like a slow dawn breaking over the desert, a skin only to be seen. That's the story of Eli Mercer and May Caldwell, the cowboy who thought he'd buried his heart, and the widow whose eyes brought it back to life. You've been watching Frontier Myths, where every tale carries the dust, the danger, and the heartbeat of the old American West. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Frontier Myths. Leave a comment below. Tell us what part stayed with you most. Until next time, may your trails be kind, your heart steady, and your soul find the peace it's been riding toward all along.